Hi Guardians, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm asking the question, what makes a Titan a Titan? So if your answer to that question is a crayon eater, you're technically correct. The Titan is the mobile tank class. Head down, punch everything, soak up damage and destroy everything on the battlefield. So we're going to build into that fantasy and really empower our Titan to its maximum ad clearing, DPS dealing potential. So let's begin with our exotic armour. The Severance Enclosure has the exotic trait Spheromatic Trigger, where powered melee final blows unleash a damaging explosion, and finishes and final blows against more powerful targets increase the radius and damage of that explosion. Now this is a neutral exotic piece, meaning it works on any subclass. However, for this build, we're going to be using the solar subclass. First of all, we're going to take the Burning Maul Super, which means we can spin around and damage enemies, or the more usual approach, we're going to slam the maul to the ground, which creates this flaming cyclone that damages targets and scorches them. For our abilities, we're going to take a Rally Barricade, simply because it has a shorter cooldown than the Towering Barricade. However, if you want to use the Towering Barricade, feel free to do so. We're going to use the Throwing Hammer, as we can pick it back up and reuse it. Your choice of grenade. Fusions is a very powerful grenade, as is solar, or if you're going into higher end content, the healing grenade is always the way to go. For our aspects, we're going to take Sol Invictus, where solar ability final blows, Hammer of Sol Impact, etc., and defeating scorched targets creates sunspots. As you're probably aware, when you're stood in a sunspot, your abilities regenerate quicker and your super drains more slowly. Sunspots also scorch and damage any enemies that walk through them. And if you walk through a sunspot, you get restoration, so our health will regenerate over time, and that isn't interrupted when you take damage. For our second aspect, we're going to take Roaring Flames, where final blows with solar abilities or ignitions increase the damage of our solar abilities, and that stacks 3 times. Looking at our fragments, we're going to begin with Ember of Ashes, which allows us to apply more Scorch stacks to targets. Ember of Eruption, so our solar ignitions have an increased area of effect. Ember of Char, so our solar ignitions spread Scorch to affected targets. And Ember of Empyrean, where solar weapon or final blows extend the duration of restoration and radiance, and this tops out at 12 seconds. Moving on to our seasonal artifact, select the champion mods of choice, and then we want Flint Striker, so rapid solar precision hits and rapid solar weapon final blows will grant us radiance. Unravelling Orbs, where picking up an orb of power grants our strand weapons unravelling rounds. Kindling Trigger, so while we're radiant, solar weapons will apply scorch to unscorched targets. Torch, so while we're radiant, we deal increased weapon damage to combatants affected by strand and stasis debuffs. That's a 5% boost to damage. If we're going to be in a fire team, we will take Heart of the Flame, where casting our solar super grants nearby allies radiant, and more importantly, it increases the damage of our super for each nearby ally. If you're going to be running solo, switch this out for solo operative, which gives a nice 35% damage boost when you're alone. We're also going to take Revitalizing Blast, where causing damage with a solar ability will weaken champions and bosses for a short duration. Rays of Precision, when radiant, our solar precision final blows will cause ignitions. And Wished into Being, so when our super is almost fully charged, ability final blows will spawn additional orbs of power. And then for your final perk, it's your choice. From Whence You Came, if we're going into a Taken or Scorn based activity. Origin perk specialisations to focus up with your weapons that you'll be using, or possibly even a dragon's bite, which means if we break a combatant's shield with a strand or stasis weapon, it has a chance to suspend or freeze that person. When selecting your armour, our first priority is resilience. Ideally we want 100, as this gives a 30% damage reduction to all incoming damage, but also this regulates the Titan class ability cooldown. Second priority is discipline. Aim to get this as high as possible so we have grenades on tap. And strength we would like reasonably high, but this doesn't need to be up at 100. This is simply so if we lose our hammer, we're not completely defenceless for a long period of time. Other stats are less relevant, just keep them above 30 points so you don't incur the cooldown penalties. Moving on to our mod setup, on the helmet we're going to take a harmonic siphon, where rapid solar weapon final blows will create an orb of power. We're going to take hands on, so we gain bonus super energy on melee kills. Bear in mind we're going to be punching a lot, so our super does chunk up very quickly. And then the final one is your choice of either heavy ammo finder or a second hands on. Personally, I like the heavy ammo finder, as you'll see shortly we're going to be using an exotic primary, so we will be getting those heavy bricks quite quickly. However, if you feel it's more important to be spamming your super, switch that out for second hands on. Moving on to our arms, we're going to take impact induction, where causing damage with a powered melee will reduce our grenade cooldown. A heavy-handed, so our powered melee final blows create orbs of power. And then, the last one, I personally am taking a harmonic loader so I can reload my solar weapons faster. However, if you don't feel that this is required, replace this with a second impact induction to further reduce our grenade cooldown. On the chest piece, your choice of appropriate damage resistance mods to suit the activity you're undertaking. On our legs, we're going to take recuperation, which gives us a chunk of health when we pick up an orb of power. Orbs of restoration, where picking up an orb of power grants a small amount of energy to our least charged ability. And then we're going to take a solar weapons surge, which increases the damage of our solar weapons whenever we have an armour charge. Now, if you're not going to be going into something where you need that burst DPS, this can be switched out for Absolution, which reduces all ability cooldowns when you pick up an orb of power. However, I like having that additional damage every time I pick up the orb. Moving on to our class ability, we're going to take a Reaper, so if we get a weapon kill within 10 seconds of using our barricade, we will spawn an orb. Proximity Ward, which gives us an overshield while performing a finisher. Now bear in mind that Severance Enclosure creates bigger explosions when we do a finisher. Having that ability to get in there safely is always a boon. And then finally, we're going to add on a bomber, which reduces our grenade cooldown whenever we use our class ability. And finally, moving to our weapons. In our kinetic slot, we want a strand special weapon. Now, there are several to choose from here. This season, Super Cluster and Scatter Signal are both strong choices. However, personally, I feel that the Swordbreaker with 1-2 punch really does the deal with this build. In our energy slot, I recommend using the Sunshot Solar Exotic Hand Cannon. However, you can use Polaris Lance or Hierarchy of Needs, or maybe even the Vex Mytha class if you prefer, all of these being solar primary exotics, which means that our heavy ammo finder will be producing bricks more frequently. However, because we're going to be up in the faces of all the enemies with the Severance Enclosure and punching, Sunshot just feels stronger in my opinion. And then finally in our heavy slot, there are many options that are very suitable for this build, but in my opinion, the cream of the crop is the Throne Cleaver Solar Sword. Tireless blades and incandescent just makes the battlefield go boom. However, if you haven't got this sword, There are some other solid options: fixed hordes, apex predator, caretaker sword is also a good option. Just go with whatever works best for yourself. So let's look at the gameplay loop, which is very simple. Find an enemy, hit it with the hammer, it will explode and take out all the adds around it. Run through the sunspot to gain restoration, then switch to sunshot and get yourself radiant just by shooting a few bits of trash that are floating around. Then carry on punching and shooting your way through the horde. We should have Roaring Flames ×3 by this point, meaning we're doing increased damage with our abilities. When facing anything tankier, a shot from our Swordbreaker to activate 1-2 punch, swiftly followed by a hammer and a punch, should make light work of it. And don't forget that when we pick up our hammer after it's hit something, it grants us cure, so we will chunk our health back up. So there we have it. That is how you channel your inner Crayon Muncher. If you've enjoyed this video and you're interested in other Destiny 2 builds, please think kindly and give me a like and subscribe. But whatever you're doing today, I hope you have a fantastic day.